SECfans.com. Going to talk LSU and Texas A&M. It's going to be a fast one, Josh. This is kind of getting into the grind at the end of the season. We're grinding on this show. We've been talking for a few hours now on some of our other previews, and this one is interesting because there's some interesting clashes here. There's the fact that LSU is looking at a 10-win season, which I don't think anybody was giving them at the beginning of the year. Still sitting at number 7 right now. Really impressive year. And Jimbo Fisher has had some bumpy road along the way with A&M, but still seems to have everything going in a pretty good direction. And still an incredibly dangerous team, especially for an LSU team that struggled with Arkansas 2 weeks ago. We've talked about how that was probably a little bit of a hangover from the Alabama game, so don't judge them too harshly there. But we're going to do something different this time. Usually we talk a little bit about matchups, we talk a little bit about scheme, but let's go straight into the model in this game and let the model drive our discussion of this game and go from a real nerdy numbers perspective. Let's kick the door open with the model.
Right. So, for those that haven't watched this, the model generates some intermediate statistics. We're a per play model because total yardage tends to punish teams like LSU that don't run as many plays because they don't run tempo versus a team that racks up a ton of total yardage by running 90 plays in a game. We look at how you do versus your opponents, how your opponents did versus everybody else, extrapolate some production for you off that, and then for each of your teams, our computer will generate a unique scoring model based off what you've needed to in terms of production to produce points, how many points you produced in each game with similar production, or sort of plotted, if you will, against your own history. The first statistic we generate is an intermediate statistic, the percentage of opponent averages you allow. So if your opponent averages 4 yards per carry, you allow 3 yards per carry, you allow 75% of their averages. Both these teams have really good rush defenses. LSU's allowing 86% of opponent averages against the run. That's a good number. It's not a great number. You can get that number pretty low. 85% or below is where you kind of get to be a great run defense, and you can get it below 70. Case in point, A&M is only allowing 64% of opponent rushing averages. As much as A&M slid off, that problem has been due to the passing defense, it's been due to the offense. The defense has been quite good all year. It still is against the run, and it is one of the better run defenses in the SEC. That is why Texas A&M has had such a good season to a large extent. Passing defenses, very good for LSU, 76% of opponent passing averages. It's darn hard to keep a team to 75% or below. It's just much harder to slow down a passing attack. Texas A&M, on the other hand, 110% of opponent passing averages. That's just straight bad. And that is a flat opponent-adjusted number. A&M just can't stop the pass this year. They're giving up 9 yards per attempt. And that's crazy. So if you were to plot, average passing offenses nationally, a team averages a top 10 national day against A&M. Memphis is 10th in the country at 8.9 yards per attempt. It's mind-boggling that could be the average allowed by A&M. So that has been no question whatsoever their Achilles heel. It was against Mississippi State in that loss, and it has been all season for Texas A&M. And then based off that, it kind of creates a weird game because LSU wasn't really expected to be able to run the ball. 2.5 yard per carry expected. But they're expected to have one of their better passing games all year at over 8 yards per attempt. Flip side, A&M is not expected to really be able to run the ball either that well, 3.8 yards per attempt, and they're not expected to be able to throw at all under 6 yards per attempt. So you end up with a 4.96 yard per play for LSU, 4.77 yard per play for A&M game. Both those numbers under 5 yards per play means neither offense is working overly well. And so that comes out to an 18-18 score. A&M edging LSU. If you let me take it to the decimals, 18.4 points for A&M, 17.9 for LSU.
And I wonder, looking at this, because we've seen other models that don't necessarily show A&M doing this well defensively. Does the model know? Can the model tell what I think we're seeing here? And it's that we all know what A&M's weakness is, but we also don't think that LSU can exploit it.
Yes, I think that's sort of the short answer to it. I pulled it up. We do these models before the spread comes out. So A&M is favored by 1. So right in line with this, A&M basically supposed to be able to edge it out, but the model just, I don't know how much the model can really take into account how bad A&M has been against the pass and the way teams are able to sort of skew the way they play offense against A&M. Mississippi State is not a passing team. Mississippi State, when they played A&M, became a passing team, and that's how they won that ball game, throwing 11 yards per attempt. They put up, it wasn't a horrible day, but 14 to 22, 241 yards. Ole Miss obviously is a passing team, so that game wasn't surprising that it was a little closer than you might guess. But even Auburn, who's not been able to pass the ball well, went through it 30 times in that game, completed 19. That's how they beat Auburn. It's how Auburn beat them in the fourth quarter in hurry-up mode. So it's basically saying a lot like Auburn A&M, LSU is going to be able to keep the game close by playing way against tendency, having to be a pass-first team if they want to move the ball. But the model just absolutely sort of bangs its head against the wall because it doesn't really know what to do with two teams that are going to have to play a style of offense that neither one of them is any good at. At least A&M is used to not being able to move the ball in general. They've had that problem through the year. But for LSU to depend on the passing game and really have to abandon the run, I don't know that we've really seen LSU do that outside of they had to do it in the Florida game and they lost. And they had to do it in the Alabama game and they didn't really have an answer for it. So it is kind of an interesting matchup.
It's also interesting that they've got a lot of common opponents and have performed similarly well, like with Ole Miss and Auburn. Yes, Auburn beat A&M. It was close. LSU beat Auburn. It was close. Mississippi State is probably the outlier there that's the most glaring. Both teams, incidentally, had the same exact score against Arkansas, 24-17. So I think that, without looking at the model and without thinking about how you would pick this game, if you were just shooting from the hip, without looking at anything else, just thinking about these two teams, you'd say, okay, LSU's going to beat them pretty good. But then when you get into the numbers, you look at the common opponents, you look at, what the model's showing, it's not that crazy because performance-wise, so far, except for Mississippi State, LSU's just been a little bit better than A&M every step along the way. And granted, common opponents doesn't tell the whole story. There are matchup issues and things like that. But from that standpoint, it's not crazy.
Yeah, it's not. And, the last time, so there is another game this year where LSU had 2.5 yards per carry. And that was Mississippi State. They won that game 19-3. They won it. I'm not going to say they won it because of this. Mississippi State couldn't move the ball in that game. And Mississippi State offensively, I'm not sure if they're better than worse than A&M. At that point in time, they were probably worse. But A&M's not been very consistently good themselves. But they won that game. That game was a sound victory because Mississippi State threw an interception on the third play that was returned to the 3-yard line that LSU was able to build a 7-3 lead. And the LSU carried that 7-3 lead in till what? They scored with, let me see here. Yep. Field goal with 0 seconds remaining in the first half. So and
LSU fans are going to be mad. They're going to think we're discounting this win, but we're actually really high on Mississippi State. So this is this isn't a slight to LSU. Like 19-3 against Mississippi State is great because we think Mississippi State is actually a far better team than their record shows.
No, I agree. And, we're both kind of scratching our heads that Big Ten fans have been sort of mocking us all week that Mississippi State is ranked a top 25 team with 4 losses, and Northwestern is actually ahead of them in the rankings with 4 losses, some of which, by the way, are to Akron
and Duke.
So yeah, Mississippi State is much better than their record and much better than they're really being given credit for. A 19-3 win was sizable. Over again, Mississippi State beat A&M pretty badly. The point I was making is that just looking at the offensive production for LSU in isolation, what does that look like? They definitely struggled to score against Mississippi State. It's not that they were lucky to score 19, but they scored 19 in large part because Mississippi State's offense was so bad, both in terms of turnovers and a complete lack of production, that LSU had constantly had short fields, and they still only scored 19. So it's pretty reasonable, if this model was correct in terms of its numbers, that LSU can only score 18 in this game. I think, to me, the turning point, though, is LSU's receiving core versus A&M secondary. It is the problem for A&M all year. We can talk about Mond and what that means for him, but I will say it's at home. He's played a lot better at home versus away. I don't expect a great day for him unless, occasionally he has a day where he goes off, but I don't really expect that here. The bigger deal with A&M pretty consistently is they struggle with big physical receivers with lots of talent. LSU has some big physical receivers with a lot of talent. To me, that's the matchup that's probably going to decide the game.
Yeah, it's got to, because I don't think LSU is going to be able to run the ball. That's one thing that A&M has done consistently all year. It shows in the numbers, and it's shown every week. And I feel good about that, because we said this, I think, either coming out of the Clemson game. We said A&M had what looked to be an elite run defense, and we've said it every week, and it's proven us right every week. We've also said that A&M had a weak secondary every week. Said that coming into the season, it's proven us right as well. So I feel like we're pretty good on A&M, and especially defensively. I don't think LSU is going to have a great day running the ball, but I do think if you're talking about the quarterback matchups, who's poised to have the better success. I mean, we saw an LSU defense give Alabama a lot of fits, and an A&M defense that really didn't. I think that you're right. Mond has a game every once in a while where he's just out of his mind, and he might have one here. To me, if Mond has a successful day against LSU, I think it's going to be on the ground. I think it's going to be far more likely that he has a great game on the ground than it is through the air. What do you think about that?
I wholeheartedly agree with that point.
Yeah. So honestly, I'm going to go ahead and give my pick now. Like I said, I don't think either team runs it in this game. The problem is I don't think A&M throws it, and I think LSU throws it enough. And I could see a defensive short field score, something like that for LSU. I'm going to go 24 to 17 LSU, with it being a little more comfortable than that score indicates.
Yeah, so my prediction that I'd already written down was 21-13. So, basically the same score, just off by a field goal on either side. Same point. I think Mond's going to screw up at some point and turn the ball over, and that score is going to be enough to win LSU the game. I don't think it's going to be pretty for either team. I think LSU will be able to move the ball some. I'm a little intrigued by the fact that Anderson and Sullivan for LSU are 6'6", 6'7" receivers. They're not necessarily burners. A&M's big problem in the secondary is they're slow as hell, and I think Jefferson could be really, really effective in this game. I'm kind of actually a little curious if the lack of just straight line speed from LSU is going to mean that they can't exploit A&M the way some other teams were able to, where A&M secondary just flat out, just like Renfro, is barely safety speed. And at corner, he's gotten just torched over and over again. I'm not sure LSU's in a great position to exploit that, but yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup. I do think LSU's favored. Or should be favored. A&M is favored. I will say several weeks ago, I was pretty well convinced A&M was going to win this game. If midseason, there was no doubt in my mind. I probably would have picked A&M by 2 touchdowns. It's really a sign of LSU's come together as a team. They found an offensive identity in their run. They're not a consistent offense by any means, but they have an offense. They're going to grind it out, be a pro-style attack, and just get the points as they come. They don't press, and that's worked for them because the defense is excellent. The run defense is good, and the secondary is phenomenal. And given all that, I've seen Mond make way too many stupid plays, and against a really, really good secondary, he's going to make one or two plays that's going to cost him the game. Like you said, unless he plays out of his mind, and then all of a sudden A&M has a chance.
The only thing I am, the other place I am kind of intrigued is, given LSU's need to send linebackers to get home, Alabama couldn't really run it with Tua because of the gimpy knee. I know he had the long run, the 44-yarder at the end, but as a function of their RPO game, it wasn't there because Tua was banged up. Mond will run in this game, which might be an area where they can exploit blitzing linebackers. And if Aranda sends 6 or 7, there's another thing that LSU does, or that A&M does, that could catch them in a bind, and that's they throw to the tight ends and they throw to the running backs. And that's an area where I don't think that LSU has faced a whole lot of that this year that could be exploited. So that's another place of interest. Anything else on this game before we wrap it up?
Not too much. I think we've kind of beat this one to death.
Okay. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. LSU fans, A&M fans, let us know your score prediction. Let us know what you think about the model, that 18-18 score, and if you can see where the model's coming from. Give us your MVP for the game if you want to. A&M fans, we've been pretty high on your team this year, and we're really high on your coach, so I don't think we're too harsh on your team, but you feel free to tell us where we're wrong, where we're crazy. Shout out to TexAgs. We always get posted there, and we want to say thank you because it's pretty cool to see our content be consistently posted in other places. Tiger droppings, man, y'all got to get on it. We don't ever show up there. So thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and God bless.